Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. First, let me thank and commend General Milley for his extraordinary service. I first had the opportunity to meet the general when he was the Assistant Division Commander of the 101st Airborne Division, along with General McConville. And since that time, and before that, you've been a remarkable soldier. Thank you, sir. Mr. Secretary, you indicated to the chairman that a default on our debt would have profound repercussions in the Department of Defense. And that also tracks with the testimony of Avril Haines, the Director of National Intelligence, before the Armed Services Committee. But there's another aspect of this, too, and that would, I think, can give China an opportunity to exploit this dramatically. Do you have any concept of the strategic competition with China if we default?
There is substantial risk to our reputation, Senator. Again, we are viewed as being a source of stability globally, and we always pay our debts. And there's just a number of things that we're working with allies and partners on that would come into question as to whether or not we'll be able to execute programs. But most important, this will affect the livelihood of our troops and our civilians. We won't be able to pay people like we should, and I think that's something that China and everybody else can exploit.
Yeah, given the disposition of China, they would like to exploit every opportunity, and this would prevent them a huge opportunity to provide disinformation to American citizens, to confuse them, and also in the world community, as you point out, to suddenly and miraculously look like the adult in the room. And that would be, it's interesting, we're all talking about strategic platforms and how do we, operate vis-a-vis China. This could be one of the greatest strategic eras vis-a-vis China in history. Is that fair?
I think that's an accurate statement there, Chairman.
Thank you very much. The chairman also brought up the issue, which is, I found profoundly disturbing, of the inability to routinely confirm general officers. And I know 7 former secretaries of defense wrote a letter actually deploring this as a gross politicization of the military. You yourself wrote a letter to Senator Warren. Mr. Chairman, I would like unanimous consent to include both these letters in the record.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. General Milley, we've talked conceptually about this issue. Can you give us an idea of the impacts that are beginning to happen and that will accelerate?
I can, Senator. Thanks. Let me make one comment on that default piece, though.
Yes, sir.
China right now describes us in their open speeches, et cetera, as a declining power. Defaulting on the debt will only reinforce that thought and embolden China and increase risk to the United States. With respect to the general officers, there's about 650 that are on various lists throughout the services that are up for nomination confirmation. And they're all going to go replace someone, and they're going to be replaced, so it's 650 really times 3. So you're looking at 1,800, maybe almost 2,000 officers. Probably all of them, I don't know for sure, but probably most of them anyway are married. They probably have some kids. So you're probably looking at 3,000 to 4,000 lives that are directly impacted, in my view. So that'll have significant personal impact. Then from a readiness standpoint, these are flag officers, so they're in charge of very large, complex organizations. And this is unsettling for the institution, and it will have, over time, I think, a significant degradation in readiness, in capability, morale. I think the impact is pretty significant on that whole. And I understand I'm going to stay out of the whole issue of why it's being held, but I think holding up commissioned officers' confirmations on anything other than their own personal talent and skills further politicizes the military. And if the intent is to not politicize the military, I think it has the opposite effect. It drags the uniformed military right in the middle of a political argument.
I think you're exactly right, and that's why we'll do our best to reverse this. Again, I think the cumulative effect is very, very dangerous to both readiness and certainly to the families of these officers. A final point, I'm running out of time, but we talk a lot about the number of platforms we're going to have and et cetera. My recollection, but I'd have to be checked by the historians, is that the French army had many more tanks than the Wehrmacht in 1940. But what they didn't have is the combined arms teams, the communications, et cetera. And one of the areas we're trying to do is to get JADC2 in place so that we can communicate, which will multiply our power so that, you know, X number of platforms could be more effective, even if our opponents have a lot more platforms. It just, is that accurate or a fair comment?
It is, Senator. JADC2 is a critical component of the modernization of the joint warfighting concept. It is the command and control system that brings it all together in a combined arms way. It involves software, hardware, procedures, et cetera. It's a key piece of the way the United States military intends to operate in a future operating environment. And without it, you won't be able to execute combined arms operations. So JADC2 is critical.
And it'll multiply the number of platforms we have effectively.
Absolutely.
Thank you.